Welcome to Unlock Your Child's Full Potential. I'm Billy, mom of three, positive parenting coach, and your guide to raising kids with connection, not control. Here we talk about parenting without punishments and constant power struggles, building deep bonds, and creating a home where kids want to listen, so you can enjoy family life to the fullest. Hi friends, and welcome back to Unlock Your Child's Full Potential. Today's episode is one of those conversations that I know will leave you feeling inspired, energized, and maybe even a little more playful. Because we're talking about something we don't often give ourselves permission to explore as moms: imagination. Not just for our kids, but for us. My guest today is Melissa Llarena. She's an imagination coach, a mom of three boys, and the author of Fertile Imagination, a book that is basically a wake-up call for any mom who's ever felt like she had to press pause on her dreams after having kids. Melissa's big message: you don't have to wait until your kids are grown to start dreaming again. You can be a great mom and go after the things that light you up. And in fact, when you do that, it's powerful for your whole family. In this episode, Melissa shares how to start reconnecting with your imagination, even if it feels completely dormant. We talk about imposter syndrome, how to stop putting yourself last, and what it actually looks like to take small, playful steps towards your own goals, even when your plate is full. And let me just say, Melissa is hilarious. She had me laughing and nodding the whole time. She's sharp, insightful, and just so fun to talk to. So, if you've ever felt stuck, uninspired, or like you lost a little piece of yourself in the chaos of motherhood, this conversation is for you. Let's jump in. Welcome, Melissa. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, anyone that's listening. Hello, fellow parents.
I'm really excited to dive into this conversation about how we as moms can tap into the power of our imagination. It's something we often overlook, yet we use constantly, whether it's finding creative solutions when our kids push back, navigating scheduling chaos, or simply keeping the peace in our homes. I think parenting requires us to think on our feet, adapt, and come up with new approaches all the time. And my podcast is all about raising kids with connection, not control. And I believe imagination plays a huge role in that. When we allow ourselves to think beyond the usual scripts, we create a more flexible, fulfilling experience for both ourselves and our kids. But before we go into all of that, let's start by getting to know you a little better. Tell us about yourself, your family, your career as an imagination coach, which, by the way, I absolutely love as a title. And what led you to write your book? Just tell us more.
Okay, let's start with a story. This was 2011. I just had my firstborn. So I have three boys. I have a 13-year-old right now, and I have identical twins who are 11 years old. So back in 2021, I only had one boy. And I remember starting my business actually with him on my chest in one of those ergo baby things, like baby Bjorn.
I love those,
And
yeah.
yeah, and this was in New York City, and this was my first prospective client. And I had just started a career coaching practice in 2011. So this was way before it was in vogue to be a coach. And I brought my baby. And so I was having this business conversation in the middle of Manhattan, lunch conversation. It was a client and it was his wife. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, let me just, hands off my son to his wife, who was actually a former coworker of mine back in the day. So Danielle's holding my child. And all of a sudden, in a restaurant packed with people having lunch, she says, Melissa, I think you have to check his diaper. He had a complete diaper blowout in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. I was not prepared. This was my firstborn. But the moral of the story is that as a mom, not only did I have to use my imagination for figuring out how to clean all that up, but on top of that, I closed my first sale. That was the beginning of my career coaching practice back in 2011. And I would say anyone that's been in a sticky or smelly situation knows that you have got to rise to that challenge, right? And for me, it was a superpower that I felt I had, this ability to figure out how to make something work, even if it was without the proper tools or in the wrong setting or without like a baby changing table. That restaurant didn't have a baby changing table in the bathroom. So these are the skills that I relied on. And for me, my imagination was something that inspired me. So even as a little girl, I was like, oh, one day I want to be a business owner. Like I literally had that thought from watching TV a lot as a kid. And I was like daydreaming about being a business owner and I would be in a creative field. And that is what kept me excited about things. Then, fast forward, I have my identical twins. I had my identical twins, and I will say that when I would see the sun go down or the sun set every single night, I felt complete dread because I was exclusively nursing these identical twins. And I had my 1.5, almost 2 year old also there. And I didn't know if I would make it every single night. Needless to say, I was not sleeping. And what I realized was, and this is in my book, Fertile Imagination, but what I realized was that the moment where I would start like imagining like cool things or thinking about the next chapter of my life, that was always the time right before I would actually fall asleep in bed. So, any parent that's listening right now, think about how well you slept during those early years. Think about how well you sleep now if you have a teenager that's out and you're just worried about them. And lo and behold, I was not able to imagine. So, what I realized was okay, this is a problem because this is what gives me life. I get so excited when I have big, bold dreams about myself, about my kids. And so I was like, okay, I want to rediscover my own imagination. And that started me along the journey of writing my book, Fertile Imagination, which is based on me having conversations with people on my podcast, the Mom Founder Imagination Hub, and figuring out like how they have used the most like sometimes insane ways of thinking about solving problems, whether it was as a mother or in building a business or being a working professional. So the book is inspired by my podcast guests. I wanted to rediscover my imagination, and I came up with a framework that helped me rediscover my imagination and helps readers rediscover their own imagination. And the book took 2 years to write. And fun fact, it only took 38 weeks for me to create two babies. But the book, 2 years. It was during a global relocation. We were living in Australia, returned to the United States. So it was an adventure.
Wow. And can you share some of the exercises that help moms rediscover their creativity? Simple ones that they could try right away.
Yeah, from a very like actionable perspective, I interviewed the former CMO of GE. So Beth Comstock, she's someone that you would look at her and you're like, oh, this is a serious businesswoman. However, she has such a fun side to her. And if you have to be innovative, like at work or at home, this is a really fun thing to do. For example, for her in GE, she had to come up with like new business ideas. And she realized that K-pop, so South Korean pop culture, has a loyal following. So I'm not saying that as a mom, you go on a plane to South Korea, although you absolutely can, maybe not this moment, but at some point when, government stability is in place and get ideas from outside of the world. But as a mom, you can actually do the same thing on YouTube. I'll give you an example. Let's say you feel like it's Groundhog's Day. Every day is the same. It's kind of a boring day, blah, 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 right? So goes a lot of motherhood. You might be inspired to go on YouTube and find a YouTuber that's in another country and gives you a glimpse into the cultures of another country. Like I'm doing that now. This guy doesn't know it, but like I would buy his t-shirt. But this guy's name is Paulo from Tokyo. And I literally will watch YouTube videos with my three boys. They hate it, but I love it. And this guy is like interviewing like shoe cobblers in Japan, interviewing moms on New Year's Eve in Japan. And as a family, we visited Japan. So that's one example of almost like having an insight into a culture and just like sprinkling innovation and fun and different ways of approaching life on a day-to-day internet ready access. And that came from Beth Comstock. Another very easy thing to do if you want to feel reinvigorated or happier or more excited would be the simple act of playing with your child. And here's the funny thing, our kids, they force us to do a couple of things, one of which is to lose control, to your point, and what you help people with, right? So being in flow. Another part is also, it's not about having an end goal. For example, I interviewed like a toy historian on my podcast. So, one very tangible thing would be to have your child lead in that playing activity. And yes, they will do the most random things. However, that helps them leverage their imagination and it helps you just like chill out and observe, and notice their brilliance and just be like coaching them and saying, "Oh my goodness, I never thought about using that mattress down the stairs as a slide, as my sons did the other day," right?
Still?
So, yeah, it's like the other day. Like my 11-year-olds and my 13-year-olds were so bored that they were like, let's take our mattresses and use it as slides down the stairs. Obviously, my alarm in my mind was just like, ah. But I will say it was a better alternative, in my opinion, than screen time, right? So they were using their imagination. I also had to use my imagination because I had to climb up the stairs with mattress and sheets and all the like. But it was just a fun moment and a memorable moment. So playing and letting them lead the way is another way that you can reawaken your imagination, right? And then the other side of it is if you're connecting with someone that might have a completely different perspective than you, I'll give you an example. My best friend does not have any kids. However, I feel like my imagination is stretched whenever I look at her self care rituals. I mean, they are sensational. She has a cream for every little like square corner of her face. She puts on lip liner. Like parents, do we have time for lipstick? Now I have lipstick, but this is like, a special moment. But lip liner and then some sort of covering on top of the lips, like three-step lip plumping process. I mean, it's like unbelievable to me. I know this is so sad, but that is the extent of my self-care. And I'm inspired by someone that has a very different life experience, in terms of her own self-care. So that's more basic, right? There's other ways that you can have that spark back or reawaken your imagination. So I said the first could be, simply like looking into another culture using the internet. The other one could be playing with your kids and letting them lead the way. And then this one is hanging out with people who have totally different life experiences. So you have like a window into another way of thinking and being, and you might appreciate their ways too.
I love those. And you have to be open-minded to really enjoy that and not be judgy. Watching your friend using all those layers of lipstick and eyeliners and stuff, you could be like, don't you have a life? Like, who has time for that? And yet, if you're in this state of open-mindedness, you could see things differently. So I love all those tips. And
Thank
what
you.
about the kids? I know they're much more creative when they're young, but still, you have a 13-year-old.
Mhm.
How do you inspire him to be more creative?
I'm going to tell you a really, really boring answer, but I'm telling you right now, this insight is worth gold. So last summer, I enrolled my son in the Austin filmmaking summer camp. So here's the deal with that. Obviously, that's like a creative experience. He gets to create some sort of video and be an actor and work through the editing process and learn some real skills. But on top of that, and if you have a business and you're a parent out there, I highly suggest this. I had my son, I gave him a challenge. I said, look, I'm going to have you pretend to be me on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is like the world's most boring platform for a 13-year-old. However, what I do know is that he's going to think about posting and engaging differently than me. Like we're just like very different thinkers. And although he's digital native, he actually doesn't have a device. So that is in and of itself a whole other conversation. So I had him intern for me. What did that mean? That meant that I introduced him to AI. I had him learn how to use AI to engage with people on LinkedIn. And I pointed him to, the results and the statistics and all the numbers. And in that whole process, he was learning how to do something that on the surface would appear to be boring and completely not necessary of an imagination. Like it sounds so boring. It's like, oh, LinkedIn, right? However, for him, what it helped him do was realize, okay, there's a way to understand if the way that I'm thinking is producing results. And you could imagine something and you could build something and you could never build it, which a lot of people don't, right? There's a lot of content on everybody's laptops and everything that never has gone out to the world. But then on top of that, you could even like measure your results. And as a 13-year-old, I would argue that that's really sophisticated. And I thought it was really dope as a mom to just give him like the free reign. And and I'm really, really proud of him because in that exercise, it wasn't just busy work. He actually produced results. The kid got me like a 400% increase on LinkedIn post views or whatever.
Wow.
I know.
Kudos.
I know. See, it sounds boring and it sounds kind of like, oh, that's using your imagination. Yeah, it doesn't just have to be, like a paintbrush and an easel. It can also include core skills to help them feel productive that they can then sell later on to get an internship that is outside of their mom's business.
And you have a lot of trust in him to give him access to your LinkedIn account if that's part of your business.
Yeah, like I really didn't think he was gonna do anything wild and wacky. Like my kids are so good that way, So yeah, it was totally like an easy one for me.
Tell us how your family dynamic is. Like, I imagine such a fun household with three boys that age. What are some of the challenges and some of the joys in parenting at this stage?
Well, it's interesting because I grew up in a house with girls. So for me, I am totally outnumbered. The amount of testosterone here is just insane. And I don't get it because, for example, you enter a room, and for me as a female, I would be like, hi, how are you, human being? Whoever's in the room. Not my three boys. My three boys are very like physical, for lack of a better phrase. I'll give you an example. Like they will go to bother each other. They will go to any person's device. What is that called when you're doing video games and you're holding on to the
The joystick?
yes, they will literally just like touch each other's joystick to bother one another, like get a rise out of one another. So that's like my daily struggle. It's just kind of being that one innocent human being looking at these boys interacting in ways that are really normal, but just like I never had that life experience like at all. So for me, that's something that's like a struggle. It's okay. this is weird. Like if I had a brother or a set of brothers like that, like I think I would just I don't know, I would be screaming at the top of my head if they were my siblings. But it's
Oh,
interesting
okay.
because you have identical twins in there. So with identical twins, things are very different. Identical twins, they actually, it's okay when they bother each other. However, if the older brother does the exact same thing, it's like World War III. So it's very particular. We call it the twin thing. I think I looked it up too. Apparently, it's like when twins will exclude, the third sibling.
That
So that's the challenge. Like the joys for me are, for example, I went to a band performance for my 13-year-old who plays the trumpet. And I sat in the audience, and I guess like when I'm listening to music, like it's so emotional. But then if I see like my son who's has the first chair, like he's like the best one in trumpet specifically, and it's like beautiful music, I just like fell apart crying of pride. So that's a joy. And then for the twins, for me, this is like a really nerdy joy, but if I see them sitting down, eating like a little Trader Joe's ice cream cone and doing their homework together in silence, I just love it. I'm just like, oh my goodness, they are so cute. Like those are the joys.
the little joys of life, like everyday
Totally.
life. Oh, I love
Yeah.
those. I love those. And I want to talk about your book, that it challenges the idea that moms have to wait until their kids grow up to pursue their dreams. Tell us more about that. I think a lot of moms have this imposter syndrome, whether it's parenting, work, or personal goals. How can we help them make a step and push past that self-doubt?
So in the book, the three steps that I didn't really lay out yet, but I'll share them now. They do include this tackling the imposter syndrome idea that you mentioned. So the first step is reawakening your imagination. And what that means is that you are essentially working on those limiting beliefs like imposter syndrome so that when your imagination has an idea, it realizes, oh, she's not going to ignore me this time because she's hesitant to take action on that idea, right? So that's step one, working on those limiting beliefs. And so, pertaining to having an imposter syndrome, it's something that I would say I felt more as a mom than before I was a mom. And I don't know if it's the fact that I have three children that now I'm paying attention to, or it's the fact that when I was younger, I was naive, right? It's
Hmm.
like you think you could be like the Supreme Court justice. That's what I thought I would be, the
Yeah,
United
on top
States
of the
Supreme
world.
Court
Yeah.
justice. Yeah. And then life kind of hits you hard and fast. And then it's like, oh, you kind of retreat. So for me, it's also about resilience. And so I speak about that also in my book, Fertile Imagination. And the fact that here we are as moms telling our kids, oh, you got hurt, but get back up, try it again or whatever. Well, it's not something that we can just say. We have to show them. As everybody knows, I'm not saying that this is new information, but they learn from what they see more than what we say. Although, my gosh, I really wish they would just learn from what I say. So that's step one, reawaken your imagination. It requires your imagination to feel like it's not going to be ignored this time. And so if you've ignored your ideas very much, very often, after a while, you're not going to get these amazing ideas as frequently and as, loud in volume because you've been ignoring it, right? So that's step one. And then the playing with your imagination is step two. So, like, once you do have an idea, let's take an example. Let's imagine that you want to start a business or something, right? And you're listening to this podcast right now, or not even a podcast, because that's what we're doing. We're talking here on this podcast. And let's say that that came from your imagination, and all of a sudden, your imagination is like, oh, but I really want you to do a podcast on, how to make the world's best healthy cookies. I'm making this up. Fine. So then your imagination is like, oh, is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? And then let's say you actually take a step to start like experimenting in your kitchen, in your oven, right? And coming up with the best recipes. That is the second part of taking your imagination and waking it up and using it. The second part is playing with your imagination. So you're playing with the idea in reality. So you're literally baking the cookies. You're literally telling people, hey, what do you think about this cookie? Would you buy this cookie? How much would you pay for this cookie? And then the stretching your imagination part is the third part, right? So once you're playing with this idea in real life of the cookie business, then it's about, almost like enlisting other people's imagination so that you can get to your goal as efficiently and effectively as possible. So it's also called networking, but I know that word sounds so like businessy and sometimes intimidating. However, here's what I know as a fact. A lot of moms have the world's best networks. And you know why? Because we need them, right? Because we need to understand what's happening in our kids' lives or in whatever it is in our community. So we have all these informal networks who are so powerful, by the way, but we don't feel that encouragement to be like, but would you buy my cookie? Or would you sell my cookies in your store? That's part three. That's stretching your imagination. So that this way you basically started from a place of, okay, yeah, I feel like an imposter. I'm not really a baker, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, here I am in the real world actually doing it. And I'm asking for help. And I'm actually trying to really, I don't know, help my community with these beautiful cookies or whatever. So it's three steps. And it's hard for a mom to consider if the assumption is that only your kid's imagination matters. It's just not the case. Your imagination matters so much so that I believe that if a mom is inspired and her kid sees that they are going to actually be even more inspired. I feel like it's contagious in a home. We're like the barometer of the tone of the house, like how big our dreams are, like the opportunities that we talk about around our kids. I feel like there's something in the air that's hard to ignore that can just really make an impact in our kids.
Yeah. I feel we don't talk enough with our kids or around our kids about our plans for the future, about our business plans, about our ideas. At least where I live, it's more like you talk to the kids about kid stuff and not
Mhm.
so much about the grown-up stuff. But we do have a practice to set of goals in the beginning of the year, stretching your imaginations to think what's possible to do during this year. What kind of practices can you enroll in? How many books can you read in one year?
Yeah, and I think the way that I approach what you just said, which is the whole goal setting sort of process for our kids, is I also really pay attention to the things that they don't do as easily. I believe that goals for myself too, and for my boys, I believe that they have to feel almost like awkward, impossible, and there's that risk of failure, right? Because I think that, at least in my life, I have learned more from the hardest things that I've tried to accomplish. And maybe I accomplished them, but maybe I didn't. But just realizing that I can survive even if I failed is a gift. And so with my kids, that's what I try to do. I definitely pay attention to what's hard for them, right? So like one of them is in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. However, he's not so inclined to like fight, battle, use his strength. And because I knew that, I wanted him to try to be in an actual tournament, like global scale tournament in Austin. And he did it. And I feel like, yes, he lost all 4 rounds, but the fact that he was able to get back on the mat all 4 times, I saw in him a little spirit that was just like, I did it, like that. And
I showed
again,
up.
he showed up. He didn't win, but he showed up. And that's what we need to do when it comes to those ideas in our head as moms or parents, right? It's like, okay, that's hard starting a cookie business or whatever it might be. But at least let me show up to the idea. Let me give it a fighting chance, whether I win or I lose. And it's inspiring, I think, as a parent and for the kids too.
It is. It is. Although our fear of failure is so strong. And
Mm,
I think the fear of like, what are they going to say if I fail
hmm.
with this business? If I fail a few times until I find my thing. So this fear of what are others thinking about me, that's a huge one too.
Yeah. And I think with regards to what others think about me and the fear of abandonment overall, right? So, like, if a group of people that you associate with, this happens a lot with moms who like leave the workforce because they're going to be focused on their family, for example, right? There's that fear of like, oh my gosh, I just left the workforce, but do I even matter anymore? Like, oh, what am I, quote unquote, just a mom or whatever. And then you kind of lose sight of that community, right? And like your values change and that person changes. But here's what I know to be true based on a lot of the people that I've spoken to. So, like clients, mostly like coaching clients, oftentimes there's like no one's thinking about you,
Mhm.
right?
True.
b
Yeah.
no one's paying your bills, so like let's at least think about that one. But then c, it's like chances are you're doing something that other people just don't have the guts to do, you know like secretly in the back of their minds, maybe they've always wanted to open that business or quit their boss or their career. Like I haven't heard so much in the opposite. Like I haven't heard people like say, "Oh yeah, I don't respect a mom that stays at home," or "I don't respect even a dad that stays at home." I have not heard that actually, to be honest. So I feel like some of those things are in our minds, some of those
Yeah.
things.
A lot of them. Our
Hmm.
fears are much worse than the actual thing. So I agree with that. Okay, so I love to wrap up my interviews with an action step for my listeners. And we talked about practical ways to reignite your imagination. But for a person feeling stuck or uninspired, what is one simple thing that they can do right now?
For me, dancing, oh my gosh, like just put on your favorite song from when you felt like you were more creative and more imaginative. So think about, for me, for example, like I might think about the 80s for me personally. Like I was a little girl and I used to love Madonna and I would just dance my little heart out. And it takes me back to that time when I had these huge ideas and visions of my life as a 25-year-old. I was never more than 25, by the way, when I would envision my life. So that's an easy zap. Like that's like a time warp. That's an easy one to just take action. So dancing would be like the first step. And if you're not able to dance, like just everybody has different abilities, different interests. The other side would just be taking a breath. It's funny, like I became a meditation practitioner and for me, it's been such a great thing to be able to, if I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling like overwhelmed, to simply take a intentional breath, like a nice little in and a nice little out. And I've even done that in like my children's bedroom when they were asleep. Like I advise my clients, like they tell us to connect with our hearts when you're meditating. And if you're a parent, you might feel like your heart is outside of your chest. It's our children. So why not go to the baby nursery or the kids' room when they're sleeping? That's the key. You don't want to wake them up. That would be horrible. Sit down like applesauce crisscross in the middle of that room and just take a beautiful deep breath in and a beautiful deep breath out, realizing that you are around your little hearts or your big hearts, depending how old your kids are. And I feel like either way, one is total serenity, one is wild feminine energy, the dancing, but either end is a way to get unstuck, I would say.
Beautiful. I love them both. And lastly, Melissa, where can listeners connect with you and access your book and resources, the podcast? Tell us more about that.
Yes. So the podcast is the Mom Founder Imagination Hub. So while you're here listening to this conversation, I'm also on YouTube as well. But you could go ahead and listen to the podcast. And there's definitely some parenting experts there as well as career focused conversations for working moms. The book, you could purchase it every single place, including Amazon. So, Fertile Imagination is the name of the book, a guide for stretching every mom's superpower for maximum impact. And you could definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm going to throw in like a really random one here, but I prefer LinkedIn. Hey, my son was on LinkedIn and I love talking business and your career. So definitely check me out on LinkedIn. But if you type my name, Melissa Llarena, you will absolutely find me because I've been around for 13 years.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd be so grateful if you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if this show has been helpful or encouraging to you, would you take a moment to leave a review? It's one of the best ways to help more moms around the world find this podcast and join us on the journey of raising connected, confident kids. I appreciate you being here. It truly means so much. Until next time, take care and keep showing up with heart.